I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't have a good time with Sonic Prime. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Chum Zone. I wanted to talk about Sonic Prime Season 3. Actually, I wanted to talk about Sonic Prime as a whole because, let's be honest, granted it was 3 seasons, it really was actually just one broken up into parts. So what are we thinking about this? Was this mid? Was it a good time? I'm not going to sit here and act like I didn't have a good time. So with that being said, let's jump in. Before we begin the video, do me a favor, like, subscribe, share this with your friends. And with that said, let's jump into the discussion of Sonic Prime. So let's get this out of the bag right now. The ending of Season 3 was lackluster and mid at best. But before we get into the negatives, I do want to talk about the positives when it came to Sonic Prime. Starting with the characters. I do love a majority of these characters, and I do love their 3D models. I'll even say this is the best they've ever looked in a 3D animated space. Knuckles, Sonic, Rouge, Tails, even Shadow, all of them look stellar in their 3D models. We only got a brief moment to see them in their original space, hence Green Hills, but it was nice seeing them and their original personalities before we got shifted into the Shatter Spaces. New York City, the pirate worlds, the jungle world. I didn't really care too much about the jungle world, but it was nice seeing the different interpretations for the characters. I think they could have expanded on the jungle world, but you can tell New York was where the budget was really starting to kick in. While the other two worlds just seemed rather bland or just wastelands. The Chaos Council was a fun time, especially shout out to the baby and the gamer Eggman. I like those too. Most of the characters played their roles very well. The tone, the music, the fight scenes, the speed scenes, the super form, granted we only got to see it for a brief moment, and I'm gonna say the pacing to a degree, and we'll get into that. Special shout out to Rebel Knuckles, Dread, Metal Rose, and Shadow. They definitely stole the show for me. And then there was 9. 9 just was top tier at best, and it was such a perfect what if scenario of if Sonic and Tails never met. I am very happy that they explored this what if scenario because he actually reminded me of Sonic Lost World and how much of a smart mouth Tails had in that game. And then it turns out that 9 is the villain. You can't get no better than that. But at the same time, that's when things start to get repetitive and it starts to show that they were getting a little sloppy. Now we can shift into some of the criticisms that I have and some of the issues that were happening throughout the series and getting up to the conclusion. To be honest, I was actually okay with Sonic's characterization. He was cocky, he was goofy, but he still got a moment to get things done. It shows that Sonic wasn't this quote-unquote perfect character, and he does have flaws within his personality. There were really only a handful of times where I was having an issue with him, and this one particular cutscene where he was in the jungle and he was trying to be a therapist to the other characters. The other issue I had with Sonic was at times I felt like he was holding back a lot of his abilities, or it felt like he was being the punching bag and taking a lot of unnecessary hits when I know Sonic the Hedgehog is strong. Now, as far as the pacing that I am specifically talking about, the pacing seemed to be all over the place when it came to the banter and the fight scenes. And what I mean by this is it would get repetitive. I know they're going after the shards. I know it's supposed to be a fun little, I guess you can call it cat and mouse. Sonic's going after the shards. Everybody else is going after the shards. It's pretty much a tussle and a fight of who can get to the shards first. I get that, but it kept getting repetitive over and over and over, and it was like a juggle fest of who's going to get them. I also have to understand that this is also a kids show, and that action is part of what's keeping the kids entertained. So while I do find it a flaw, I do understand why they chose to go this direction. But now we have to talk about the biggest elephant in the room, the ending. If I'm being honest, this was a spitting image of 06 at the ending. The ending was a spitting image of 06. And if I'm being honest, the whole season itself, season 3, was lackluster. Each episode was, again, coming up with the pacing, a rinse and repeat of the Prism and 9. Sonic and 9 would get into a debate. 9 would give a big old FU. 9 groans a little bit to get his powers ready and create his little army and the whole fight scenes. 9 groans again at Sonic and his friends. The fight with the Metal Army happens again. It's a majority of the episodes of a rinse and repeat throughout season 3. Use the Prism powers, create the army, Sonic and his friends fight. And it happens over and over and over. But I will say that big robot, that was good. That was real good. Another complaint that I have is the way that they utilized Shadow. It's like the game was forcing Shadow to not be in certain situations when he has every right to be in said situation. First, he lost the Chaos Emerald. Then he couldn't use 9's tech for some odd reason. And then finally, he got beat down so bad they threw him into a pit. At that point in time, he has pretty much missed a good majority of the fight. And to my surprise, they actually utilized the super form in season 2. And I loved it. It was badass. And there was such a speedy moment, and then we just never get it again. I think they should have used that form at least a second time. I think in some way, shape, or form, Sonic the Hedgehog should have absorbed all of the Prism energy and gave us that purple super form again. It would have been such a badass moment. Speaking of endings, they literally brought us back to Sonic's world 20 seconds after the battle for the Prism, like nothing ever happened. It's like the whole situation was null and void. Shadow pops in to take the Prism using Chaos Control. They beat Eggman, and then it's back to everyday life. No mention of the Shatter Spaces. No mention of 9. Yeah, it's just, it is what it is. This happened, and we're just gonna keep it moving. And the fact that they confirmed that it's canon, and it takes place sometime after the Advance 3, and it's very vague as to when it happened after Sonic Advance 3. If I could make a change, if I personally made a change, I would actually put this directly before Sonic Forces. Show that the Phantom Ruby has been manifested in Sonic's modern universe since we are back in Green Hill. Instead, what they do is they make the Prism, I'm assuming it's the Prism, the Prism does its shockwave again, and they race into action. So at the same time, it gives them an opportunity to say, oh, we're going to continue the series. But I don't think it's coming back. Unless it comes back as a special or a movie or an OVA, maybe. But I think they're done with Sonic Prime. I could be wrong. But yeah, that's pretty much the majority of Sonic Prime. And it's kind of weird how they broke it up into 3 seasons, even though really it was just 1. But what are you guys' overall thoughts? Do you think that Sonic Prime was a good time? Do you think it was just a mid piece of media? For me, it was a good time. I actually got to sit down with my family and watch it from start to finish. My wife actually thoroughly enjoyed all the characters and the show as a whole. Just like me, she thought the ending was lackluster. But other than that, everything was top notch and it was a good time for us. So let us know your overall thoughts, and as always, it's a pleasure. Like, comment, let me know what you think. This is Chumba signing out. Later.
Let's go. CHUMZONE, that's where it's at. Awesome gameplay, awesome reviews, and that's a fact. CHUMZONE, get in the zone. Entertainment on your PC.